Tell me what the hell are you scared of when in the end the only
Where's the love? Right here on this podcast. Welcome to Love Drops, where your hosts and One Love ambassadors, Charles and Diane, will share love, hope, and inspirational topics taken from their journey and world events. We will also include on-location recordings and special pop-up guests from cool places all around the world. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
whether big or small, love never fails. Oh, love it conquers all. Love never fails.
Welcome to another edition of Love Drop Podcast. I am so excited to have this guest back on the podcast. I'm speaking of Anke Herrmann. Anke is a multi-passionate business coach, mentor, and strategist who helps creative minds turn their vision into viable business ventures by integrating creative processes into practical business strategies. She's the author of Taming the Tech Monster and founder of Touched by a Soul. But more importantly than that, Anke is my friend. Anke is my sister girl. Anke is my partner in creating so many amazing things. Anke is not afraid to say yes to the adventure, and she is a child of Kadiwampo parents. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Anke to the mic. Anke, thank you for your yes.
Thank you so much for having me again. Always exciting to be here.
Yes. So, Anke, tell our listeners where you are located right now and also give a little bit more about what you're doing right now.
Well, I'm based in the lovely south of Spain, so that's why I'm still sitting here with short sleeves and a fan because it's still nice and warm. So I have been in Spain for 21 years. Yeah, but I'm originally from Germany and, started out, had the normal corporate, went to uni, corporate career, but then I started pivoting quite early, right? So it was literally when I moved to Australia, the first job I had was like, oh, this isn't for me. This isn't going to last. It was the very first time that I thought, well, actually, I'm not going to live my life going through this just because I'd spent the time studying it, like, no, I'll pivot. And so it was the first of many pivots. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And one of those brought me to Spain with the intention to set up my own business for the very first time. And that was like 21 years ago. And the first business was a sewing business. So that's why, you follow my content. I often talk about flamenco dresses because that's what I did for many years. But I've come around almost like combining all the lessons learned and all the expertise gathered over time to help people. Because before that, my background was in software development. So I was a programmer. And so people would always come to me, all this creative stuff, that's fun, that's nice, but can you help with the tech, right? And for a long time, I'd say, yeah, but that's the least of your problems, mate. That's the easy part. And go away until the pandemic hit, when I could see how people were like shoved into this online space, and people who would do would coach people in person, who would hold in-person workshops, all of a sudden had to do it online and were like totally like overwhelmed. So, and it didn't really feel fair then anymore to just say, well, this stuff's easy. That's when I wrote the Tech Monster book, right? And so to this day, people come to me for tech help when they have an area of expertise, have local clients, they know what they're doing in their field. But when it comes to, okay, so I want to either I'm maxed out time-wise, like I have no more time for more consultations in person with people, or they feel quite often like one thing I hear all the time is like, if it was for experience and expertise, I should be a millionaire. right? So there is
Yes.
this feeling of my brilliance is withering away in my little corner of the world here. So as a result, then there's this sense of, I want to get this work out to more people
Right.
globally, right? And
Right.
now we're in the online space, and now it's like, I don't know where the button goes. And the thing is, the tech stuff is where they can feel the gap, and it's not the only
Hmm.
gap, right? So but that's
Absolutely.
basically what I do now. People who have their expertise, who want to expand it, who want to, sometimes they want to just slow down working, and they, oh, I want to, I want to build courses on the basis of the experience I have, and instead of explaining it over and over to the people in front of me, I want to be able to offer it as a course so that I can help people without it taking up more of my time. So sometimes I just want to be able to retire and build something else over here that isn't as exhausting. And I've been there too, my sewing business, right?
Right.
So, but it's at that point when they're feeling like this work needs to get out into a bigger space.
Right. I love your story. I know your story. And we're going to have to put the car in reverse and go back a little bit with your story because our episode today is yes to the dress and the lessons that you have learned your move from Spain, because in your talk just now you were just saying how you were a programmer and you went from a programmer to a seamstress, from a seamstress to now taking everything you learned and you are helping other people make those pivotal moves in life. So, just getting back to that yes to the dress, right? When you talk about your flamingo dress business, you just light up. People have things in life that they reflect on or they remember, and it just lights them up. So that lights you up. So just briefly take our listeners through that journey of going from a programmer to a flamingo dressmaker because you chose to say yes to your passion and purpose over training.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. It's really quite a crazy story. I have to say, I had been like a hobby seamstress for literally all my life, right? So that piece wasn't entirely, it wasn't like, oh, I want to be a professional guitarist. I've never played the guitar before, so it wasn't that, right? But I had never sewn for anybody else, right? As a kid, I would make dresses for my dolls, and then I kind of came across a pattern for a skirt. That's when I started making clothes for myself. And also back in East Germany, where I grew up, there was more of an incentive to learn how to make your own stuff because, there wasn't that much variety and the sizing system didn't suit me. So for me to find clothes that fit was like almost impossible. So the idea of being able to make my own so I could wear blouses and trousers that weren't too short, for example,
Right.
was actually very appealing, right? And a lot of people, in the Eastern countries know how to sew and know how to make stuff, right? Just for necessity.
Yeah.
And so that you had an outlet for that. So, and then, it was useful. So from that point of view, I didn't start from zero there, but I never took a class, never, was just a hobby, right? So I was working in software development. I was a programmer and I loved it. Like, to be honest, I really loved it. And still, there was always that sense of a little undercurrent of worry because every time, management flown, there were rumors floating around of, oh, there's going to be a restructuring thing going on. We were all like, uh-oh, who's going, right? Because you never know, right? They merge departments, and depending on who wins the game, they bring their own people with, and all of a sudden, you, with no fault of your own, might be without a job, right? And so, even though I was contracting, but still, there was always like, I'm not in control of this. And I was like in my late 30s at the time, thinking, it's still easy now to just go and find another project, right? And I remember thinking, boy, I don't want to be 50 and have to send out programmer resumes that will be happily discarded by some 25-year-old who kind of can't possibly imagine, like what some 50-year-old goose wants. I don't think I want to be there when I get to this point. So the
Yeah.
time to rethink this is now. And at the same time, I had started to learn some Spanish just for the pure fun of it, because I booked a trip to Peru and thought I was going to have a better time if I just knew some Spanish, and gone and come back and started to take trips over to Spain. Every time I went to Spain, I didn't want to go back home to London. Like every time, every trip, it got a little worse, and then that's the thing. Like now I'm sitting here late October, middle October in my summer dress, and the thought
Yeah.
of going back to dreary, drizzly, grey London, until I sort of had the thought, oh God, I'd just love to not have to go back, right? And there was the thought. So I was like, oh, so what would that look like? And I never forget, like, I was back in London on my dining table, I was cutting a summer dress, right? And I was thinking, so if I really was to move to Spain, like, what would that look like? Like, what on earth would I do for a living, right? Because
Right.
I thought, like, okay, moving away from the actual career path I was on, so that there was like, I didn't like where this was going. Also, the whole shift to everything had to be outsourced. So I didn't like the direction this was heading,
Right.
So I thought, well, it is a good time to pivot. And Spain is really calling. How could I make this work? Like, what would I do? And so I'm sitting there still having some flamenco music in the background, twiddling around with my ruffly dress and thinking, like, what would moving to Spain look like? And so I thought, well, I don't know, like, I don't know anybody and like whatever. And then I was like, wait, let's just take a step back. What would I do if I didn't have to worry about anything? If I didn't have to worry about money or certifications or language skills or time or like nothing? Like if I didn't have to worry about anything, what would I want to do? And I'm like, oh, and I'm like, well, I'm doing it right now. I have some flamenco music playing in the back. I'm making a cute, ruffly dress. I'm like, oh yeah, I'd have a little sewing studio. Like nothing fashion industry wise, not interested in the fashion industry, but like made to measure, something specifically custom built for you,
Nice.
and in my little studio. And I'm like, oh,
So hold up,
like,
Anka, hold up.
mhm.
You're telling me that you're a programmer making good programming money and you feel the call to Spain and there's just like, okay, I want to be in control and I want something different. So with that scenario, you're
Yeah.
telling me that you moved to Spain to make flamingo dresses. Yes or no?
Yeah. Yes, not immediately though. Not immediately. So I didn't have that thought and quit my job the next day, right? So the thought was there. And the first thing I was looking for was a showstopper. Like, is there something now that I have this thought? Now, when you said earlier, you've got to kind of picture yourself where you want to be. And I knew precisely where I wanted to picture myself because I'd been there a bunch of times, right? So I was sitting there, like in the historic part of Granada, in my lovely little studio, making cute dresses. And so, like, oh, that like feels really good, right? But thought, well, okay, what could be a showstopper, right? So there
Okay.
was nothing. It's not like becoming a doctor where I need to have, a certain qualification. Like, no, if I can get somebody to buy my stuff, I can sew for people, right? So that
Yeah.
wasn't the problem. I had no visa issues. Being from Germany, I could live in Spain. So that was no issue. And so there was really nothing. There was no showstopper, right? And
Right.
all the rest of it, I thought there's only one way to find out.
Right.
Right? There's only one way to find out because I can't Google how to ditch your software career for a sewing business in Spain, right? Especially in a
Right.
different country. And there was nothing you could Google or where nobody could answer the question for you. It's like the only way to find out was to go there and try it out, right?
Okay.
And so what I did do is obviously I kept studying Spanish. So I thought like it's going to be hard to do a business in another country if you kind of have language skills. And I also took private classes with a seamstress, like with a tailor in London, right? So because I thought I needed to know what my skills were worth, where
Right.
they fit in, whether this was like, don't even think about it, or you kind of good enough to build on. So
Yes.
those two things I did. So it took about a couple of years for me to actually resign, quit my lease, and move to Spain.
So we're going to fast forward. You are now in Spain and you've done all the things you need to do. You made the big leap, because a huge leap to jump from a job of the kind of known income, even though it was a little uncertain how the market would go, but at least you knew that a paycheck was coming, to now you're jumping into this adventure. You've said yes to the dress, the
Yes,
flamingo, making business.
totally.
So it just took right off for you, right?
Not really, no.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, because I always have this thing that I fear regret way more than I fear failure, right? Because failure is inevitable. Like, not everything is going to go your way, and, whatever, right? So that's no big deal. But I didn't want to come to the end of my life, whenever that will be, thinking, oh, I wonder what life in Spain would have been like.
Exactly.
And like, that's heartbreaking for me, because that's what my grandma did and I didn't want to do that. So I thought, in case of doubt, try it out, right? Because it's the
Right.
only way to find out. And so I say that, so I've got a t-shirt for it, right? So it's because that's the thing. It's like, it's about trying on the dress. And I often use that metaphor, like, always think, like, you have to imagine you walk past the shopping window, right? And there's a shop window and there's a dress you really love, right? And you go like, oh my God, I love this dress. I love this dress, right? And you can walk past there and you'll always carry that, with you.
Right.
And the only way to get it out of your system is to try on the dress,
That's
right?
right.
And
That's
then you there's two ways this can go. Either you put it on and you go, oh my God, this is my favorite dress ever. Or you put it on and you go, oh, doesn't look that good on me. Right? Doesn't feel good, doesn't
exactly.
fit right. It's a nice dress, but it's not for me, right? But then next time, from that moment on, you can walk past that window and it's just like, oh yeah, it's a nice dress, and it doesn't, like, you've got it out of your system. And I wanted to have
Exactly.
Spain out of my system more than I wanted I needed the business to work. Right? I just wanted to have it out of my system. I wanted to know, and went in there thinking, it's a 50-50 thing, because
Right.
I knew that there's like manana attitude in Spain, and me being German, I thought that could happily annoy the hell out of me, right? So I didn't know whether I was going to like living there, just because I like it on a holiday. But again, the only way to find out was to actually move there and find out. You cannot
Exactly.
research that, right? So that's
Exactly.
where the jump comes in, where I'm like, I'm happy to make the jump because I want this out of my system. I want to
Exactly.
know whether it will
Exactly.
be what I hope it to be or whether it won't.
Exactly. And it's 28 years later.
It's 21 years later.
Okay, so well, 21 years later, so obviously it worked, because you're still there.
Yeah.
And that just brings me to a really, really important part in pivoting, taking a leap, saying yes to any adventure. And that is that walk away junction. So tell our listeners where that crossroad hit for you, where it was either walk away or stay.
The first one came fairly early on, really, and I think when I've looked at a lot of other people who've moved, I think it's quite a common pattern, right? So
Right.
the first is like, I've seen it on a YouTube video where they talk about when the honeymoon phase is over, right? And that's so true, right? After the first 6 months or 9 months, and I hadn't managed to get a client, so I was running around like scratching my nails on dance school doors, because I discovered that, like, flamenco dance costumes are the things that always made to measure. So that was perfect clients. But nobody knew me, right? So I was scratching my nails on dance school doors, and there would either be no, don't need anything, or need somebody who's really good at sewing but doesn't charge because we don't have any money, or we don't want to spend it on you. So, so there was a lot of doors in my face all the time. to the point that I thought, I don't know whether this was a good idea. And I'm like, maybe I should just get a job in software development. That would be so much easier, right? Well,
Right.
and then I got cured from that pretty quickly because then I saw the job ads that were available and thought, oh, let me just try and sell another skirt instead because, I thought I definitely didn't want to be in that industry in Spain.
You were seeing that it was taking a little bit longer than anticipated. And I find that in every leap, you're going to, get that walk away crossroad. And for me, it's like, how bad do you want it? So you went back, you looked at job ads, and they did not align with your soul. And so you knew that you wanted it enough to keep pursuing the flamingo dressmaking. You knew you wanted enough to pursue it. Was there that one connection that opened the doorway? Was there that one job that changed everything for you? Did that happen?
Absolutely. Yeah. Totally. Totally. I had a friend, right? Like we met pretty shortly after I arrived, and she'd also arrived from Puerto Rico. And so we were friends, and she said, "Oh, I'm a flamenco dancer." And I'm like, "Oh, I've never seen you dance." And she goes, "Well, she was still, and because it's like she was dancing in Puerto Rico. And so she kind of felt a little intimidated in Spain now, right? And so that was a bit of a joke between us, right? And so she basically one day said, "Hey, I'm in this school and we are rehearsing a dance and it's really lovely. And why don't you come and finally watch me dance?" And I'm like, "I'll go," right? So, and I thought like, "Oh, I'm going to a dance school. Well, let me be prepared." So because I had no resume, like I had no pictures of past dresses I made. I had nothing, right? So what I did do is I made a couple of outfits for myself, like a skirt, a couple of tops, a little dress, right? Because obviously they were going to ask, "So show me what you've made. Like, how can I trust you?" Right? And so I
Exactly.
was running with my little bag with clothes, and I would say, "Well, hey, do you have a dress?" Like a change room, and then I would wear what I'd made, right? So that was my resume when I had nothing else. And so I went there, had a little leaflet, because I thought if I go to school, I'm going to ask the people there if they mind me put my little leaflet at the notice board, right? And so that's what I did. As I walked in, I watched her dance, and it was delightful. And so I asked the guy who ran the school, I said, "Hey, like, do you mind me putting this thing up?" And he goes, "Not at all." And he goes, "Oh, so you're sewing? Oh, can you show me what you do?" Right? And then off I went, tried on my little dresses. And he goes, "Well," he says, "actually, you do alterations?" Yes. And he says, "A client of ours has bought a dress somewhere and it doesn't fit right. Can you?" So I did that, came back the next week, and he goes, "Well, hey, could you make something else?" And yes, I can. And the third time back, he asked me, he says, "Hey, I need to ask you something." He says, "We've got an end of course performance coming up, and we need like 12 identical dresses, but we only have 3 weeks. Can you do it?" Yes. It's like I had no idea whether I could do it or not. Like I really didn't know. I didn't know. Then he goes, "How much to charge?" Like I had no idea about that either. So I look back now like, oh my God, they must have thought I'm a fool. But anyway, I took the project because I thought like after all these months of being told, getting
Right.
the door slammed in my face, I'm like, okay, if I don't take this, I can just like, like that'd be stupid. And so I took the project and I did work through the last, like, that was kind of the last night before the performance. I worked through the night and I never saw the dancers dance because I went to the theater, helped them get dressed, sat down in the audience. The curtains opened, the lights went out, and that's all I remember because the rest of it I slept through it.
Oh, wow. But you said
I
yes.
I
You
did
said
say yes
yes
because I
to
thought
the
like it's
dress.
the opportunity, and that was the root of. I worked for this school the entire time I had my business, right?
Wow.
They called me back every year, and I did stuff in between. So that was like a core client of mine throughout the entire time, and everything else span out of that, right? Because the
Yes.
next thing is I get a call and somebody says, "Hey, I'm Maria. Do you remember I was one of these 12 girls?" right?
Wow.
And so can you make me something else, right? And then sometimes somebody would call and say, hey, I'm a friend of so and so, and she was one of the 12, right? And that's how it all started. And then it just grew
Wow.
from there. Yeah.
Wow. So in that period, 6 to 8 months, where it was a drought, you kept pushing forward. You did not quit. And I'm sure it was discouraging, but you pushed on. And because you pushed on and you showed this, I'm really going to follow this call. You pushed through and you took the opportunity, and the opportunity came in an invitation. It came in an
Yes.
invitation from someone else who had leaped, because she leaped from Puerto
Yeah.
Rico to
Totally.
Spain, right, to follow
Totally.
her call. You
Yes.
leaped from London to follow your call. So you got two leapers coming together. There was an invitation
Yes.
that led to an alteration that
Yes.
led to a transformation, right?
Yes.
So as we get to the part where I guess it's safe to say that your business was successful, very successful. You rose to the top of the game. Your name became known. They knew Anke Herrmann. Anke was known in
Yes.
Spain, right? So you made a name for yourself. And then with success, there's a crossroad. And that is things that is often not thought about, because with success, especially when you're a solopreneur, you get so much business that it drives you to exhaustion. We're going from the hustle to struggle. We have achieved the goal. We're at the mountaintop, but we're exhausted.
Yeah.
So, what was your lesson? What can you tell listeners? What nugget can you give?
The biggest lesson is really to think about what you actually want your life and business to be. Because I went in, and I think it happens a lot with people who follow their passion, right? I mean, I'm not regretting it, like, not at all, but sometimes I'm thinking, geez, there's a little bit more vision beyond the next skirt, right? Would have been really helpful, right? And I think I see it a lot now with, and I don't work with dressmakers now, but like everybody I work with, it has that same, you're more interested in your craft, and you're not really that interested in the business side of things. Like, you're not interested in marketing and positioning and, branding. Like, you're not really that interested in it, right? But I think to make this work, you really need to be, right? Because what happened was I only thought, okay, I just need to find a pull sole, buy a skirt I made, and another and another and another. And next thing I know, I'm on this relentless hamster wheel, right? Because it's all nice if you have 3 clients, but if you have 20 pulling at you, and I need this by that date, and I need the other thing by the other day, and now we need extra dresses, but we have less time, and it was like, yeah, up to here, And I didn't realize until then that when you're a solopreneur providing a service, you're going to hit the capacity limit,
Yes.
right? And then you have to make a decision. And that decision is actually better made earlier on, right? To say, like, how do I want to grow? When I can't do it all by myself anymore. And there's 2 ways. You can either start going for more volume, making more dresses, and then you need to hire a team. You need other people who help you with stuff, right?
Yeah.
Or you need to go and become more specialized, more the expert in a very tight niche that allows you to charge more for the thing you're doing. Like, do less volume, but charge higher. You need to build the brand around that supports it, right? And
Right.
so I always thought, like, well, actually, the idea of hiring a bunch of people and then turning into a manager, watching other people doing the sewing I love doing, that didn't appeal at all. So,
Exactly.
but then also the part of, like, okay, where do I, and I did specialize in a particular garment, right? So, which then solved that problem to an extent, right? But so there's also, like, well, you need to kind of still find your little angle, because everybody will say, oh, you could do wedding dresses, like they get paid really well. They do, but I didn't want to deal with brides.
Right.
Like the whole wedding thing was just not
Yes,
my, I don't
exactly.
want to deal with brides and mother of brides and bridesmaids. It's like, it's just not my world, right? It doesn't appeal to me at all. So it's like you have to then find your, it's going to be like another little pivot in a way. So,
Hmm.
but that capacity problem, I think it really helps to think about that early. to literally design your business from the start to say, well, this is where I want to go. But are you caught on something that's really important? Because I've seen a lot of people, while I was doing that, a lot of people came and went trying to do the same thing, right?
Exactly.
And they would come in and say, and they were trying to actually do that and come in with, oh, well, like, here's my little practice skirt and it's $300 because I'm worth it. Yeah, you lasted like 2 weeks, right? Because nobody trusts you enough. You don't have the brand and the authority that comes with charging, premium prices just because somebody told you on a webinar. It doesn't mean, so this idea of taking opportunities in front of your face and doing something with it, right? And I got it, and I have a really quick, fun example that really shows how you show up with people is actually way more important than you think, right? I remember there was a girl, I was having my studio inside a dance school at some point, and this girl comes in and she goes, oh, look, can you help me? I'm in class, and the zipper of my skirt broke as I was trying to, and can you help? Like, yeah, I can replace the zipper. So I changed her zipper, and she goes, oh my God, how much do I owe? I was like, go run and go, you don't miss your class, right? And I just sent her off, didn't give any thought about that, right? And a couple of months later, there's a ring, like somebody on my door, and I'm opening, and I'm like, the face looked vaguely familiar, but not really, right? And she goes, do you remember me? You fixed my zipper. Oh, I remember you, And she goes, well, actually, I wanted to ask you, I have a dance group and we're up for a competition. And would you be willing to make us like 5 dresses for the, like the dresses for the performance? We're in Murcia, we're in a different time, but we'll bring you over, take the measurements and the fitting and that. So, who would have thought? And she's like, well, okay, I could have told her, like, I don't do zippers or like get in the line or whatever. But just by helping her out, there was the trust.
So you could have charged her for it too, but it made it more memorable that one, you took the time. Two, it was at no charge. And because you didn't charge me for that, I have something for you that's going to make you more than I would have paid for that.
Absolutely. And there's a whole bunch of examples like that. So to be kind of a good person actually pays off, right? You don't need to be a pushover or to be like a doormat or anything, but to just see how you can be of service to other people is definitely worth.
I love that. And that is where we pivot and come to our conclusion, because just to see where you can be of service to others. And that is where you are right now, professionally and personally, bringing all the knowledge from programming, flamingo dressmaking, dealing with customers and clients, reaching the pivotal mountaintop of not one, but two, and probably more than that, professionals, where you climbed to the top, right? When you got to the top, there was more for you, not necessarily on that same path, but pivot points. And each time you're like, you know what, I'm going to pivot to this. So it's 2 things that I'd like you to leave with our listeners, because we're talking about yes to the dress. When was that moment that you said, okay, I have given to that passion of making flamingo dresses and it's time for me to pivot? That's one thing. And then the second thing is, what is the greatest lesson that you took from your flamingo making season into the new season that has helped you to just really expand?
Yeah, 2 very precise moments about that. The moment I knew I was gonna pivot was actually at the end of one of I called them crazy seasons. It was every spring, and it lasted from February till the end of June, when all the schools had their end of, course performances, and there was like lots and lots going on. And it's physically exhausting. Like, it is exhausting. And especially if you've ever seen a flamenco dress, like, they're heavy, they're big, they're heavy, they have lots of ruffles. So it's physically exhausting. And there I was again, like in a very similar situation as when I was sitting in my software office thinking, this is still good now, but it won't be 10 years from now. And I know kind of to fully shift and pivot takes some time. Like you can't wait until you already can't see the needle or like your back hurts, like, and then all of a sudden now I need something else and it needs to work from one day to the next. So it always has some transition time, some pivot time. You need to allow that other thing to grow and you
Yes.
to grow with it. So it's not an instant pivot. So, and I was exactly there again, thought, Jesus, I don't want to be 60 and like slave over 50 or, 80 dresses in a season, right? So, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be here in 10 years from now, not because I don't like it, but because it's too exhausting and I don't want to kind of work that hard when I'm physically work that hard when I'm 60, right? And also the lesson that I'd learned where I thought, oh boy, I'm not the only person who jumps into the deep end following a passion and then realize like, oh Jesus, like, nobody actually taught me to swim in that lake, right? So I have some lessons to pass on here. So that's how the whole idea of like, okay, coach training, what does that look like? So it was literally, again, I don't want to be here 10 years from now. Now is the time to start planting the seeds for what comes after that. And so the biggest lesson for me personally was to learn to say no and to stop people pleasing, right? Because I had a moment where it was really clear to me. It was one of those heavy insights that hit you like a ton of bricks, where you realize that all your stress and pressure that you've carried for years wasn't actually because of demanding clients and demanding projects, whatever. It was realizing that it's not their responsibility to look after my well-being. Like it's not their job, right? It's not their job to make sure I get time to rest, that I get time to spend with my parents. That's my job, right?
Yes.
And no is actually quite often the kindest answer you can give somebody, right? So that was a massive lesson for me. That's helped, that's been a game changer in anything I do. And the thing is, for somebody else, it'll be something else. It's not about that. It's about expect personal growth. I've seen people who had things around money. Oh, I can't be a good person and charge a lot. Like, yeah, that's not good for business, right? So whatever it is for you, your business will bring it to the surface and it'll help you grow in that way, through that in a way that you never even imagined, never saw coming. Like everybody's looking for a marketing hack and for a whatever, and want fast growth. And sometimes it's you're the person who needs to grow into that new role and you need the time. So it's not necessarily, speed isn't always the main thing.
Absolutely, which is why 8 months was what it took for you to get to that point where things began to transform. And it just showed how much it was like dedication. And I'm sure there were many lessons in that 8 month period that prepared you and helped you once things did open up for you. And what I can say is this personally, as your friend, as one of your clients, that the fact that you have taken the leaps, you're not just talking about it, you're being about it. You are living out your message, right? So you're not asking of anyone anything that you first haven't asked of yourself. And your life is the message. So now you have hundreds of dresses that you can show, in a slideshow. You have a TEDx like talk that you did to speak to it, which I'm going to add in the narrative for people to see, because she literally did take that leap into Spain to make flamingo dresses. And I think that is one of the biggest things that really connected me to you and just resonated me with you, is that you had that vibe. I'm going to go for it because I'm going to have no regrets, right? And that is actually the title of the soundtrack to this podcast, even though, it talks about love and love never fails, but the actual name of the song is No Regrets. And it just talks about not having regrets in life, but, just going for it. So I want to thank you, Anka, for your time, for sharing, for saying yes to the dress, for just being a part of my journey. And before we leave, is there any love drop that you'd like to drop to our listeners?
I think I want to repeat what I dropped it earlier, but I think this is really the core piece or the core message I want to leave people with. In case of doubt, try it out because it's the only way to find out.
Love it. Love it. So cool. We are so in sync, Anka. And I say this again and again because I wanted to ask you to repeat it, but I just thought it. And then that was the love drop. So I just love that, right? I just love that about us. So thank you, Anka, for your yes. For listeners, thank you for hanging in with us. And if you want to learn more about Anka's journey, she has a website that I'm going to put in the narrative. She also has a phenomenal podcast, Soul Touched by Dogs, for all the dog moms and dad and fur baby lovers. Check it out. And yeah, reach out to Anka because she's here for it. She's here for opening creativity. She's here for just showing you how to unlock things you didn't even know was there. So, with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for listening. Subscribe if it resonates. Definitely share the love with others. And until next time, we say one love.
Never a second will I waste, never an opportunity to taste the sweetness of this life.
Thank you for tuning in to the Love Drops podcast. Be sure to follow this podcast and share the love with everyone you know. Until next time, this is Charles and Diane signing off. One love.
Love it conquers all, whether big or small. Love never fails. Oh, love it conquers all. Love never